You can't bring it back!
Pay for this!
Elijah Carter knew something was wrong before he turned into his driveway. The summer light had changed. For as long as he could remember, the front half of the Carter property had fallen beneath the cool green shadow of a white oak whose branches reached wider than the house itself. On hot afternoons, the tree cast a dark arch across the road, softened the glare from the entrance to Stonebridge Estates, and made Elijah's pale brick home look as if it had grown naturally from the land. That Sunday, there was no shadow. Elijah slowed his truck. The sun struck the windshield so hard that he lifted one hand to block it. For a moment, his mind refused to understand what his eyes were seeing. Then he turned into the driveway and stopped. The oak was gone. Only a raw stump remained nearly 6 feet across its fresh surface, bright against the dark soil. Sawdust covered the lawn like dirty snow. Deep tire marks cut through the grass. A section of the low side fence had been pulled loose and left leaning against a hydrangea bush. Small branches, leaves, and splintered pieces of bark were scattered near the curb. Elijah sat behind the wheel without moving. The tree had been planted in 1944 by his great-grandfather, Isaiah Carter, when black families had only begun buying land along that road. The neighborhood had not existed then. There had been no stone entrance, no decorative streetlights, no management company, and no homeowners association, sending letters about mailbox colors. There had only been fields, a narrow county road, the Carter house, and a young white oak placed in the ground beside it. Elijah had climbed that tree as a boy. His father had hung a tire swing from one of its lower limbs. His mother had taken family photographs beneath it every Easter. 3 years earlier, after Elijah bought the house from his aunt and restored it, he had paid a certified arborist to inspect the tree and develop a care plan. He had expected it to outlive him. Now the stump gave off the sharp, wet smell of newly cut wood. He stepped out of his truck and crossed the lawn. At 32, Elijah was not a man who frightened easily. He worked as a civil engineer, spent his days reviewing site plans and stormwater designs, and had learned that panic usually made a bad situation worse. But when he placed his hand against the stump, anger rose through him so suddenly that he had to close his eyes. Someone had come onto his property while he was away and destroyed something that could never be replaced. A white envelope was taped to his front door. The letter inside carried the green Stonebridge Estates logo and the signature of HOA President Victoria Sterling. It stated that the association had removed a hazardous tree after the homeowner failed to comply with an emergency safety directive. It also informed Elijah that the cost of removal, $4,860, would be added to his account. Payment was due within 30 days. Elijah read the letter twice. Then he looked back at the stump. 3 weeks earlier, a certified arborist had declared the tree healthy. And 6 months earlier, Elijah had seen a concept drawing for Stonebridge's new entrance sign. The sign had been drawn exactly where the oak used to stand. He took out his phone and called Victoria. She answered on the fourth ring, her voice composed and slightly impatient. "You cut down my tree." There was a short pause. "The association removed an immediate safety hazard. You entered my property after I told you in writing not to. The board acted under its emergency authority. That tree was healthy. Our contractor disagreed." Elijah looked at the sawdust, the broken fence, and the tire tracks pressed into soil his family had owned for generations. "Then you should have no problem sending me the inspection report." Another pause. "You'll receive whatever documentation you're entitled to. I'm entitled to know why you destroyed my property." Victoria's voice hardened. "Mr. Carter, emotional attachment does not override public safety." Elijah lowered his gaze to the bright rings inside the stump. "No," he said quietly. "But evidence overrides a lie." He ended the call. The story had begun 6 months earlier at a January meeting in the Stonebridge clubhouse. Stonebridge Estates had grown around the older Carter property. Elijah's great-grandfather had bought the land when the road was still bordered by fields. The subdivision, private road ponds, and HOA arrived decades later. A previous owner had joined the association for access to community amenities, but the agreement never transferred ownership of the Carter frontage. Elijah understood that distinction. Victoria Sterling, the HOA president, behaved as if it did not matter. Victoria had led the board for 5 years. She was polished, disciplined, and skilled at presenting personal preferences as community necessities. Under her leadership, Stonebridge had adopted matching mailboxes, tougher rental restrictions, upgraded cameras, and increasingly strict landscaping rules. At the January meeting, she unveiled the Stonebridge Gateway Renewal, a limestone monument, bronze lettering, garden walls, ornamental grasses, and uplighting. The price was estimated at $182,000. Elijah studied the rendering. The proposed wall appeared to extend beyond the association's narrow entrance parcel. "Where is the property line?" he asked. Victoria said the image was conceptual. "And where is the oak?" The rendering shows the design clearly. Existing vegetation wasn't included. The tree is nearly 6 feet across. The board is aware of it. After the meeting, Victoria approached him and suggested that the lower branches should be removed to create a cleaner sightline. Elijah said he would allow only work recommended by a certified arborist and defined in writing. "Sometimes the interests of the community must come before one owner's preferences," she said. "It isn't a preference, it's my property." Elijah hired Daniel Ortiz, a certified arborist who had inspected the oak before. Daniel examined the crown trunk roots, soil, and old pruning wounds. His report found the tree mature but vigorous, with a stable root system and no dangerous decay. 2 small dead limbs needed ordinary pruning. Nothing justified removal. Elijah sent the report to Victoria, the property manager, and the board. For nearly 2 months, nothing happened. Then orange paint appeared near the oak. A utility crew placed stakes several feet inside Elijah's yard. The management company called them preliminary markings for the Gateway project. Elijah photographed the stakes, measured them from the deed pins, and sent written notice that no work was authorized on his land. Victoria replied that the HOA had maintenance rights over the entrance corridor. Elijah asked her to identify the recorded easement. She never did. At the May meeting, the gateway cost had risen close to $200,000. Residents questioned why the HOA wanted a decorative monument while the clubhouse roof leaked and drainage problems remained unresolved. Elijah asked whether the project team had confirmed the proposed footprint. "The board's professionals are handling due diligence," Victoria said. That answer later mattered because it was false. In early June, Elijah received a certified notice declaring the white oak hazardous. It claimed the tree obstructed visibility, showed signs of decline, and threatened vehicles and pedestrians. He was ordered to remove it within 10 days. The notice contained no photographs, no technical findings, and no expert signature. Elijah responded with Daniel's report and requested the name, qualifications, notes, and photographs of whoever had declared the tree dangerous. The management company said the board relied on its landscape contractor. "Is that contractor a certified arborist?" Elijah asked Paige Collins, the property manager. "I don't know. Did anyone inspect the roots or trunk from my property? I wasn't present." Then there was no professional evaluation. Paige said she was only communicating the board's decision. 2 board members privately told Elijah they did not remember approving removal of the oak. The meeting minutes referred only to general entrance maintenance and hazard mitigation. When Elijah confronted Victoria, she claimed the board did not need to name every tree in a motion. 6-foot wide oak is not a minor maintenance item, he said. "The entrance project will happen," Victoria answered. "It would be easier if you stopped treating every practical decision as an attack on your family history." Her words confirmed what Elijah had suspected. The safety notice was not about safety. A week later, he left town for his cousin's college graduation. Before leaving, he emailed the board management company and association attorney. The tree was healthy, the dispute remained unresolved, and no one had permission to enter his land or perform work. No one replied. The tree was cut down on Friday morning. After his call with Victoria, Elijah preserved the yard like a crime scene. He photographed the stump, broken fence, tire tracks, sawdust, remaining wood in the distance from the road. He stretched temporary tape around the disturbed areas and called Daniel. Daniel arrived before sunset. Several heavy rounds had been left behind shrubs. He inspected the exposed grain and stump. "There's no evidence of emergency failure," he said. "The wood is sound." He agreed to prepare a second report comparing the stump with his inspection of the living tree. Elijah also called Simone Ward, a property and construction attorney he knew through work. After reading the notices and emails Simone gave him, simple instructions: do not pay, do not threaten anyone, and preserve everything. The next morning, the HOA sent an invoice for $4,860. It included tree removal, emergency mobilization, traffic control administration, and legal review. If unpaid, it would accumulate fees and could be sent for collection. Victoria then sent a community email claiming the board had removed a dangerous tree after repeated warnings. She presented the action as protection for children and drivers. Several neighbors thanked her online. Elijah did not argue on the neighborhood page. He began collecting evidence. The loss became more personal when Elijah's Aunt Denise arrived that evening. She had grown up in the house and recognized the tree by every scar. She walked around the stump slowly, then touched a dark groove near the edge where lightning had stripped a branch in 1978. That mark was above the old swing, she said. Elijah nodded. Denise had brought a photograph from her hallway. It showed Elijah's grandparents beneath the oak on their wedding anniversary, his grandfather in a dark suit and his grandmother laughing with one hand against the trunk. Behind them, the tree was already wider than either person. Denise did not cry in front of him. She placed the photograph on the porch table and looked toward the HOA entrance. They waited until you left. Yes, that means they knew you would stop them. The sentence stayed with Elijah. A mistaken emergency action could be defended as poor judgment. Timing the work around his absence showed intent. Before leaving, Denise asked him not to let anger make him reckless. Your grandfather used to say people reveal themselves when they think you have no power, she said. Let them finish revealing themselves. Elijah followed that advice. Helen Brooks, who lived across the road and served as HOA treasurer, had a doorbell camera facing the entrance. Its footage showed the tree crew arriving at 7:12 Friday morning. The workers remained near the curb until Victoria's white SUV appeared. She walked onto Elijah's lawn, opened the removable side fence, and directed the truck inside. One worker asked whether the homeowner knew. Victoria's answer was unclear, but the next sentence was not. The board has authority. We need it completed today. Helen stared at the screen. Victoria had told the board the legal issue was settled. It wasn't, Elijah said. Helen agreed to preserve the original video. Green Line Outdoor Services, the company that removed the tree, initially refused to speak with Elijah. Simone sent a formal demand preserving its contracts, work orders, photographs, and communications. The company owner, Rick Danner, soon called. Victoria had told him that the tree stood on association-controlled land, that the owner had received proper notice, and that emergency authority permitted entry. Green Line had not sent a certified arborist. A landscaping supervisor had only viewed the canopy from the road. The company also retained a voicemail from Victoria. Get it completed before Sunday afternoon, she had said. The homeowner has delayed this long enough, and we don't want him interfering with the crew. An emergency did not need to be scheduled around the owner's absence. The HOA's lawyers nevertheless denied wrongdoing. They attached a one-page statement from Greenline describing the oak as overmature and mentioning visible deadwood. It did not declare the tree diseased or recommend emergency removal. It was dated 2 days after the tree had been cut down. They're building the explanation backwards, Simone said. Then new utility flags appeared beside the stump. A survey crew told Elijah it was laying out the gateway monument. Their digital plan placed the limestone wall across the former root zone. The base map showed a dashed landscape maintenance area, which the design team had mistaken for a property boundary. Elijah hired Claire Benton, an independent surveyor. She located the original iron monuments, reviewed the deeds and subdivision plat, and mapped the proposed construction. The oak had stood 8 feet 4 inches inside Elijah's property. The proposed monument extended 11 feet onto his land. The HOA's existing flowerbed irrigation line and decorative light had also crossed the boundary. No recorded easement authorized them. Worse, the entrance parcel was too narrow for the large design. If shifted completely onto HOA land, the monument would violate setback and visibility requirements. The project worked only by using Elijah's frontage. The oak had made the true boundary difficult to ignore. Once it was removed, someone expected construction to begin before the ownership question was settled. The association tried to move faster than the investigation. 2 mornings after, Claire completed the boundary work, a small excavator and concrete crew arrived to begin test digging for the gateway foundation. Elijah stepped into the yard with the signed survey and told the foreman that the marked area was private property. The foreman called Paige. Paige called Victoria. Within 20 minutes, Victoria arrived with a binder and a county sheriff's deputy, whom she had apparently told that a hostile homeowner was blocking authorized community work. Elijah did not raise his voice. He showed the deputy the deed, Claire's stamped survey, his written no-entry notice, and the photographs of the proposed foundation crossing the line. Victoria held up the HOA's maintenance map. That corridor has been maintained by the association for decades, she said. The deputy compared the documents. This map doesn't establish ownership. It establishes our responsibility. Responsibility for landscaping is not permission to pour concrete. Victoria insisted the board possessed easement rights. Elijah asked her to identify the recording number. She could not. The deputy told the crew not to cross the surveyed line without a court order or written authorization from Elijah. The foreman loaded the excavator back onto its trailer. As the truck pulled away, Victoria turned to Elijah. You are going to cost every family in this neighborhood money. Elijah folded the survey. No. The person who approved a project on land she didn't own did that. A resident filmed the exchange from across the road. By evening, the short video had circulated through Stonebridge. For the first time, neighbors saw that the dispute was not merely about an old tree. The HOA had attempted to build on land its own president could not prove it controlled. Elijah placed temporary boundary markers and small no-entry signs along the surveyed line. The HOA immediately fined him for unauthorized signage. Additional notices followed: faded mailbox paint, a camera facing common space wood debris and grass damaged by the HOA's own contractor. Together with the removal bill and legal fees, the claim balance passed $9,000. Victoria expected pressure to make him surrender. Instead, the retaliation created a clearer record. The fines were followed by a formal notice of intent to lien the house if Elijah did not pay. The letter gave him 15 days to dispute the balance, even though he had already disputed every charge. Simone answered with a detailed demand that listed the video survey arborist report's attorney, warning and retaliatory notices. She also informed the insurer that continuing collection after receiving evidence of unauthorized entry could increase the association's exposure. The lien was not filed, but Victoria told residents Elijah had escaped responsibility through a legal technicality. The neighborhood divided. Some homeowners still supported her because they feared the cost of a claim. Others began comparing their own experiences. Selective parking fines, denied fence applications, unexplained landscaping contracts, and closed meetings summarized as unanimous decisions. Elijah became the person residents quietly approached with folders. He learned that Victoria had ordered one family to replace healthy shrubs while Green Line sold and installed the approved replacements. Another homeowner had paid legal fees over a shed application the committee had misplaced. None of those disputes matched the destruction of the oak, but together they showed a pattern. Victoria treated procedure as something residents had to obey and she could rewrite. Elijah did not add every grievance to his case. He helped residents organize their documents and told them to speak for themselves at the meeting. He wanted the truth to appear broader than one angry homeowner, because by then it was. Simone requested the association's project files, contracts, invoices, meeting records, and communications. The management company produced hundreds of pages. Buried among them were early concept drawings instructing the architect to preserve the oak. A later email said preservation would require a smaller monument and different placement. Victoria rejected the compromise. The oak makes the entrance feel unbalanced and dated, she wrote. When the architect warned that removing a mature tree on private land would require owner consent, Victoria replied, "If Carter won't cooperate, identify a safety or maintenance basis for removal. Once the tree is gone, the revised concept will be easier for residents to accept." Another email told Page to prepare enforcement language focused on traffic visibility and age-related decline before any new inspection had occurred. The desired conclusion had come first. The supposed evidence came afterward. The files revealed another problem. Green Line's owner was connected to Victoria through marriage. The company had received tens of thousands of dollars in HOA contracts without meaningful competition and expected a 5-year maintenance agreement for the new gateway. Helen began reviewing the board records herself. She asked Elijah to meet at a coffee shop outside Stonebridge and brought a folder and flash drive. The board had never properly voted to remove the oak. Thomas Bell had objected to using emergency authority. More damaging, the association attorney had warned Victoria in writing that the HOA's authority over the Carter parcel was uncertain and advised the board to obtain consent or court approval unless a documented emergency existed. Victoria forwarded that advice to Page with one sentence: "We cannot let legal caution paralyze the project." She then signed Green Line's payment alone. Helen said Victoria now planned a special meeting to retroactively approve the removal, continue collection against Elijah, and authorize homeowner funds for the legal defense. "She thinks a vote now can erase what she did," then Helen said. "It can't. Most residents haven't seen the documents. They will." Victoria spent the following weeks portraying Elijah as a difficult young professional, demanding an unreasonable fortune for an old tree. Elijah had not yet demanded any amount. Daniel later valued the oak at $76,000, using a recognized method for large, irreplaceable landscape trees. The figure reflected species, size, condition, location, lost shade, and replacement limitations, not merely lumber. Elijah disliked turning family history into a dollar amount, but the HOA had already reduced the tree to a line item. Valuation was the language its insurers and lawyers would understand. The special meeting drew more residents than any meeting in Stonebridge history. Folding chairs filled the clubhouse. People stood along the walls and crowded the doorway. Victoria sat at the front table between Paige and the association attorney, who looked uncomfortable. A large rendering of the new gateway stood on an easel behind them. Victoria opened with a prepared statement. She said the board had acted in good faith to protect safety. She displayed photographs of dead twigs, fallen leaves, and one old pruning scar. She warned that Elijah's legal claims could cost every household thousands of dollars. Then she showed the proposed gateway and described the future it represented. A single homeowner should not be able to hold an entire community hostage, she said. Several residents applauded. Elijah sat in the second row with Simone, Daniel, Claire, Helen, and a small stack of binders. When public comment began, Victoria tried to limit him to 3 minutes. The association attorney leaned toward her and whispered something. She reluctantly gave him 15. Elijah walked to the front without the emotional speech many expected. He placed one photograph on the display screen. It showed the stump on the afternoon he returned home. "This is what I found after the association entered my property while I was out of town," he said. The room quieted. He showed Daniel's report dated 3 weeks before the removal. He summarized the findings: healthy crown, stable roots, no major decay, no immediate hazard. Then he displayed the one-page green line statement dated after the removal. "The board has told you a professional declared the tree dangerous. This is the only document they produced. It was written 2 days after the tree was gone by a landscaping company that did not perform a full inspection and had no certified arborist involved." Victoria interrupted. "That is your interpretation." Daniel stood. "It is my professional conclusion," he said. "I inspected the living tree. They did not." Elijah played the doorbell video. Residents watched Victoria arrive, open the side fence, and direct the tree crew onto Elijah's lawn. Then the audio captured her saying, "The board has authority. We need it completed today." Victoria's expression changed, but she said nothing. Elijah played the voicemail next. "Get it completed before Sunday afternoon. The homeowner has delayed this long enough, and we don't want him interfering with the crew." The room reacted immediately. People turned toward Victoria. One man near the back asked why an emergency had to be timed around Elijah's absence. Elijah moved to the survey. Claire displayed the recorded boundary and the location of the former oak. "The tree was 8 feet 4 inches inside the Carter parcel," she said. "The proposed monument also extends onto that parcel. I found no easement granting the association construction or removal rights in that area." Victoria said the maintenance corridor had always been treated as common space. Claire answered calmly, "Maintenance practice does not change recorded ownership." Elijah showed the project emails. The first described the oak as an obstacle to the desired design. The second suggested identifying a safety or maintenance basis if he refused to cooperate. The third ordered enforcement language focused on traffic visibility and decline before any new inspection had occurred. No one applauded now. The silence was heavier than anger. Finally, Elijah displayed the attorney's earlier warning that the board should not enter his property without consent or judicial authority. A resident asked the association attorney whether the email was authentic. He looked at Victoria, then back at the room. "Yes. Did the board follow your advice?" "No." Victoria pushed back her chair. "We are losing sight of the larger issue," she said. "Leadership requires decisions. Mr. Carter opposed every effort to improve an entrance that serves hundreds of families." Elijah turned toward her. "The entrance does not serve this community by giving you permission to take what belongs to someone else." She pointed toward the screen. "That tree obstructed a public approach. The county disagrees. It was old. So are most valuable things. It had dead branches, 2 small limbs that were scheduled for pruning." Victoria's voice sharpened. "You are presenting yourself as a victim while demanding $76,000 from your neighbors." Elijah held her gaze. "I did not send a bill to my neighbors. You sent one to me." He placed the HOA invoice on the screen. The room saw the total charge for destroying his tree, including legal review and administrative fees. A woman in the front row whispered, "They made him pay for it." Elijah answered without looking away from Victoria, "They tried." That was the moment the room turned. Rick Danner, owner of Green Line, had entered quietly during the presentation. Simone called him forward. He confirmed that Victoria told him the HOA controlled the land, that the homeowner had been notified, and that the work needed to be completed while Elijah was away. He also confirmed that Greenline had no written expert finding that the tree posed an emergency. Then Helen stood. She announced that the board had never approved removal of Elijah's oak in a valid vote. She described the unilateral payment, the attorney's warning, and the plan to retroactively approve the action. Thomas Bell stood next and confirmed her account. Victoria accused both of undermining the board. Helen opened her folder. "No," she said. "You used the board's name to do something the board never authorized." The proposed resolutions collapsed. Residents demanded a motion to adjourn the gateway vote and begin a recall process. The bylaws required signatures from 20% of the membership to call a removal election. Volunteers collected more than enough before the meeting ended. Victoria left through the side door without speaking to Elijah. The next month reshaped Stonebridge. Residents gathered enough signatures for a recall election before the special meeting ended. An independent audit examined Greenline's contracts and found repeated failures to seek competitive bids along with invoices lacking adequate documentation. The management company removed Page from the account. The HOA's insurer appointed separate counsel and opened a claim. All collection activity against Elijah stopped. The removal invoice, landscaping, fines, legal charges, and penalties were reversed. The Gateway project was suspended. Victoria lost the recall vote by an overwhelming margin. 2 board members who had defended her resigned. Helen agreed to serve as interim president until a new election. The recall result was announced in the same clubhouse where Victoria had unveiled the Gateway. She did not attend. Her attorney delivered the HOA laptop, financial files, and storage keys to the interim board the next morning. The audit later found no proof that Victoria had stolen association money, but it documented undisclosed relationships, weak bidding controls, unilateral approvals, and repeated attempts to turn informal emails into official board actions. That distinction mattered. Elijah did not need to invent a criminal scheme. The documented abuse of authority was damaging enough. At the first open meeting after the recall, residents voted to publish contracts, approve minutes, and monthly financial summaries through the community portal. They also reduced the president's unilateral spending authority and required 2 signatures for emergency contracts above a modest threshold. Helen asked Elijah to run for the board. He declined. He had not fought to replace Victoria as the person controlling the neighborhood. He wanted the board to become a body no single person could control. The settlement took longer. Simone believed Elijah had strong claims for trespass, intentional property damage, and breach of duty, but Elijah did not want innocent residents to carry the entire cost through higher dues. He insisted that the parties responsible and their insurers bear most of the loss. Greenline waived its bill, contributed to the settlement, and adopted a policy requiring proof of ownership and written authorization before removing a tree from disputed land. The HOA reimbursed Elijah's attorney, surveyor, arborist, and restoration costs. Victoria repaid expenses she had approved after receiving contrary legal advice and signed an acknowledgement that the tree had been removed without Elijah's consent. The insurers funded compensation based on the oak's assessed value and the damage to the property. The exact amount remained confidential, but it was large enough to make the consequence impossible to dismiss. The HOA removed the flowerbed irrigation line and light fixture that crossed Elijah's boundary. The large limestone gateway was canceled. Months later, residents approved a smaller sign built entirely on association land without a special assessment. None of that restored the oak. The front rooms grew hotter without its shade. Road noise reached the porch more clearly. For weeks, Elijah avoided looking directly at the stump. Then Rick Danner called. One of Greenline's workers had saved several straight trunk sections in a box of acorns collected from the fallen branches. The worker had become uneasy after learning that Elijah had opposed the removal and had stored the wood instead of feeding it into the chipper. Elijah hired Andre Willis, a local black furniture maker, to turn the soundest pieces into a porch bench, a table for Elijah's aunt, and small keepsake boxes for the family. "Don't erase every mark," Elijah told him. Andre ran a hand over a scar in the grain. "Some scars belong in the finished piece." Daniel attempted to germinate the acorns. 3 survived. One seedling was planted near the old stump, far enough away for its roots to grow freely. A second went to Elijah's aunt. Elijah offered the third to Stonebridge after the new board asked how the neighborhood might acknowledge what happened. He permitted it on one condition. The plaque would not carry his name or Victoria's. It would state only that the seedling came from the Carter white oak planted in 1944 and that no association tree work on private property could proceed without documented authority, professional review, and written notice. The board approved both the plaque and a new access policy. On planting day, neighbors gathered near the clubhouse. Some apologized for believing Victoria's first email. Others simply helped move soil and spread mulch. Helen stood beside Elijah as Daniel adjusted the supports around the young trunk. All of this could have been avoided, she said, with one honest answer. What answer? That the sign mattered more to her than the tree. The new entrance sign was visible from where they stood. It was smaller, simpler, and entirely within the correct boundary. That evening, Elijah sat on the porch bench Andre had made. The oak wood had been lightly finished, preserving dark lines, old scars, and the curve of one edge. The seedling near the stump moved in the warm breeze. It would take decades to cast real shade. Elijah might be an old man before its branches reached the road. But his great-grandfather had not planted the first oak for himself either. He had planted it for a future he could not see on land he hoped his family would keep. Elijah finally understood that part of the inheritance. He chose not to grind the old stump away. It remained beside the young tree, not as a monument to anger, but as evidence the oak had existed. Someone had mistaken authority for ownership, and the mistake had not survived the truth. Several months later, Stonebridge adopted permanent rules governing access to private lots. No officer, manager, or contractor could enter for non-emergency work without written notice and documented authority. A claimed tree emergency required photographs and an assessment from a qualified professional whenever circumstances allowed. The next annual meeting was ordinary. Residents discussed drainage repairs, reserve funding, and a damaged pool pump. At the end, Helen asked whether Elijah wanted to address the membership. He remained beside his chair. "I only have one word," he said. "Ask." The room understood. Years later, the seedling beside the Carter porch rose above the roofline. The bench had weathered to a softer brown. The table at his aunt's house carried scratches from family dinners, and the keepsake boxes held photographs taken beneath the original oak. The old tree never returned. Nothing could make that loss complete or fair. But the monument Victoria wanted was never built. Elijah's land remained his. Her board was gone. Her own emails became the reason Stonebridge rewrote its rules. What she expected residents to forget became the story told to every new board member before receiving a clubhouse key. The story of the morning. The HOA cut down Elijah Carter's oak, billed him for the destruction, and discovered that a young homeowner armed with surveys reports, recordings, patience, and the truth was far harder to remove than a tree.